Learning is the key to successful investing, and who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N. Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at Learn, Grow, Invest.
Welcome to another episode in our CEO series here on Learn, Grow, Invest. Today we have the pleasure of interviewing Ivan Anderson from Trans Jamaican Highway. It's going to be a great conversation. We are big fans of Trans Jamaica here in Learn, Grow, Invest community. This is one that our community members have been asking for a long time. So you'll see that theme throughout the conversation. So I asked, Ivan, to tell us a little bit about himself. So we learned, about him, his background. That was interesting. We spoke about some of the key points coming out of their AGM, their push for technology, use of the tag system, use of their app, and some of the plans that they have there. We spoke about future plans and expansion of the Trans Jamaica brand and what that would look like in terms of how to increase the numbers so that the company can essentially make more money. And then we, close out the way we normally do, getting into his mindset in terms of how we invest and what things that he looks for there. He left quite a great nugget, I think, in terms of tips for investors. So let me know what you think of that when you watch it. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Let me know which CEOs you'd like me to interview next. And hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting us. We're glad to be here.
Thank you. So this is, I'll say it from now. I'm sure this will be one of our most greatly anticipated interviews. I know persons who DM me almost weekly. When are you speaking with Ivan? When are you speaking with Ivan? So I'm happy that we're able to get this done. I'm a big fan of Trans Jamaica. So let's jump right in. Before we get started into the company-related questions, I like to ask CEOs to tell us a little bit about themselves. So who is Ivan? How do we get to know you a little bit?
Right. Thanks again, Jeremy. So Ivan is a former engineer. So I went to Trinidad like most of the persons in my age group. Back then, University of the West Indies only had engineering campuses in Trinidad. So I spent my formative years in engineering at UA. Since then, I've been able to see a lot of the development projects throughout the country. So I've worked with the UDC or general manager of the UDC. Then I became the first CEO of NWA. As you know, I've also been MD of L.E.A.R.N, and now I'm MD of Trans Jamaica. So my whole life I've been involved in development projects, roads, highways, major structures. Virtually all the development projects throughout Jamaica, all the major projects, I've had the opportunity to participate in.
So it sounds like you understand infrastructure very well. You understand the challenges that we face as Jamaica in terms of managing said infrastructure. So it sounds like you're uniquely positioned to be the managing director for Trans Jamaica.
Yes. So I've been MD for Trans Jamaica for the past 2 years, but before that I was MD of L.E.A.R.N. As you know, L.E.A.R.N is the grantor of the concession to Trans Jamaica. So not only have I been involved in the development project and infrastructure side of the project, but also from the grantor perspective, involved in the toll road project from the very outset in 1999 when we started to think about the building of toll roads in Jamaica.
Great, good stuff. So when you're not, managing Trans Jamaica as a company, what are you doing? Are you reading? Are you spending time with family? Are you, going hunting? What do you do for fun?
I'm a avid domino player, so the dominoes are my passion. I'm an avid tinkerer. I love to tinker with stuff, whatever mechanical devices there. I love to do that kind of tinkering. In fact, when I went to UA, I actually went to UA to do mechanical engineering. And I actually did 1 year of that program in UA before switching to civil engineering. But it's still in my blood. I enjoy tinkering. I enjoy spending time with family. And my passion is dominoes.
Nice. I've tried. So I watched my mom play dominoes for many years, and she does this thing where she can tell me what I have in my hand, how many I have to go. I'm not there, but sounds interesting. I know that domino games can really can really get contentious. So good stuff.
I grew up on a farm, Jermaine. So I grew up on a farm just outside of Spanish Town. And when you grow up on a farm, everybody plays dominoes almost all day. So it's in my blood.
There you go. There you go. I spent my youth playing video games and repairing computers, destroying computers. That's how I learned about them. And so, yeah, dominoes, I'll play if it's like a games night or something like that, but that's maybe once or twice per year, if that much.
I was the opposite. I spent my time driving tractors. In fact, I started driving tractors when I was about 8 years old.
Wow.
And I worked during the summer driving tractors when I was at high school. So engineering, mechanical devices, farming is where I grew up and the things that I enjoy.
Nice. So that means if I guess a few years in the future, you may either move to a company that's based in agriculture or maybe start a farm or something.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, good stuff. So you had your AGM recently for Trans Jamaica. Excellent, by the way. I think the level of detail that you went into to paint to share with investors where the company is. I remember you showing, where the projections were to where you are now, and just the plans that you have for the future. So we're going to talk about some of the questions that I had coming out of watching that AGM. One very important thing you mentioned was managing your cost per transaction, right? You broke down where things were in terms of tag customers and customers who don't use the tag, and how are you trying to balance that, managing the cost per transaction to ultimately make more profits for the company?
Right. So one of the things that we have been doing, as we discussed, Jermaine, is benchmarking ourselves against international toll operating companies. And two of the criteria which they use to analyze their operations is the total cost to collect tolls per transaction and the total cost to collect tolls per dollar of revenue. So when we looked at those benchmarks, what we found was that in a number of the areas we were very competitive, but in a number of the areas we were below where we think we needed to be. And so that led us on a path of beginning to review the whole operation of the company. And we talked about a number of areas that we needed to improve it. One of those was obviously bringing down the overall cost of the operation, and hence our discussion about the repurchase of our operator, of that operating company, which formed a vital part of our operation. So as you'd have seen from our results for this year, that change has reduced our operating cost by about year to date end of September, to the end of the third quarter, about 7.5 million US. For the full year, we're expecting a reduction of about 12 million US. So that will obviously impact both of those metrics that we talked about earlier: the total cost to collect tolls per transaction and the total cost to collect tolls per dollar of revenue.
Okay. So so in terms of that acquisition, it definitely made sense, and we'll talk a little bit more about, I guess, future plans in that arena. So how do you find that persons are adopting the use of tag? I know you also have an app as well where you encourage persons to, I guess, top up and kind of make things a little bit more seamless, because I know you mentioned you're trying to move away from cash, because again the standard globally is that those operators who do really well tend to not use cash.
Exactly.
So how do you find that drive is going?
Well, for the persons who use our highway would have seen a major push encouraging persons to use tag. So at all our toll plazas, we give a discount to class 1 and class 2 customers who utilize tag. So in fact, this year for the first time, we had no increases in class 1 tolls for persons who use tag. So we have maintained this incentive to encourage more and more people to use tags. And what we've seen is a gradual increase in the percentage of our customers who use tags. So at Portmore, currently about 40% of our customers use tags. At Spanish Town, about 40% again. Overall, throughout all our plazas, about 37% of all our customers use tags. And our target is to move that goal up to about 80% in about 5 years. So that's where we're heading.
Okay, I was gonna ask you what the goal was. And I know that, I guess, persons may not, well, at least from when I think about it, persons may not fully understand, I guess, how to put themselves in a position to use the tag, because it's usually by the time I'm entering the toll, I'm thinking, man, it would be great to have the tag. So it's not something you think about maybe until you're entering the toll. So that's why maybe more persons don't leverage it. Just kind of sharing my personal experience there.
Well, one of the things we also did this year is to move towards selling tags in the lane. So maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you had to, in order to get a tag, you had to, come to the toll plaza and go into the office to purchase a tag. Now you can purchase a tag anywhere. You can purchase a tag in the lane itself. When you're going to pay a toll, you can ask the toll collector for a tag, and she will issue with a tag. And so we will gradually expand that access. We have a number of what we call blitzes happening in shopping plazas in Portmore and Old Harbour, where we're actually selling tags on the road, and those will continue. And in fact, coming up to Christmas, we'll be in the actual traffic itself. So even before you get to the toll collector, we'll be able to sell a tag. And hopefully we'll start that within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
That is great, because the last time I asked about it, I was told that I would have to come out and go in. But now that you're telling me that we can purchase it in the lane, that makes a ton of difference. I think that's the way to go, definitely. So I wanted to talk about the 5 areas that you mentioned. Astutely interested in 2 areas. You mentioned for global toll operators, their technology is modern. I wanted to understand what that means for you, and what strides have you been making in terms of that implementation and rollout. And the second part is, you mentioned they use data analytics. So I'm actually in the field of data analytics, so I'm very interested in that, and how you've been using that, or what are your plans in terms of leveraging that.
Right. So our toll system, unfortunately, is not that modern. So our toll system was implemented in 2003, and unfortunately, we have not had a update of the system since that. And so there are a lot of challenges with our toll system, which is where we see the international tolling companies moving to improve the tolling system, improve the back office system. So most toll operations now as we discussed in the AGM, they eschew cash, meaning that they don't deal with cash at all. So most people can go through the toll plaza just with a tag, or if you don't have a tag, with the license plate. And from that, you're then able to bill the customers on the actual usage going through the toll plaza. So we have been upgrading the tolling system over the past year. We've done a number of different upgrades to it. We talked a little bit about one of them, which was allowing you to be able to get your tag anywhere. We are upgrading the toll system to allow for instantaneous updates of your tag balances. So right now we have a slight delay when you top up your account via the web or via the app. It doesn't show in the toll system immediately. So those updates are being done. We've done some additional updates to allow customers to see their balances. Part of the challenge that customers have had as well is not knowing what their balances is when they go into the toll lane. So now we're able to show the customers their balances on the screens in the lane. So when you're driving through, you'll know what your balance is, and you'll be able to update your balance if it is required. We have added some new features to the app, which allows customers to be able to routinely top up the account without even thinking about it. So you can set your app to top up your account, once a week, once a day, once a month, depending on how you utilize the toll road. Or you can set it to top up once it drops below a particular threshold. So if your balance drops below 500 or $1,000, whatever threshold you set, the system will automatically top up back the account with an amount which you indicate. So if it drops below 500, you can say, all right, top me back up another 500 or top me up 1,000. All those things are designed to allow the customer to be able to utilize the toll road much more efficiently, much more effectively, without having issues. And as I said, ultimately, we're moving towards where we want to be able to eventually get rid of the cash lanes altogether. That requires some additional work in terms of legislation and how we deal with people who go through the tolls without a tag, for example, and how we track them down. But all those things are part of the plan that we're working through.
All right. And in terms of the data analytics side, what's your vision there? What are maybe, I guess, some of the data points you'd want to see internally? Do you have a solution in place already? How is that part going?
Right. So obviously currently we have 75,000 people use our highway every day. And as there's a lot of information there, just how people use the highway, what days do they use the highway, do they use it once a week or twice a week, or do they use it every 5 days? How can we then tailor different products to meet those needs that people have? So that is where we're looking at. How can we use the information that we have on the customers and how they use the highway to improve the product that we provide to the customers?
All right, that sounds interesting. And my mind is going all over the place because I train people how to use Power BI. Actually, it's one of the things that I do, and so I love these conversations about how to leverage data. And it's so great to see you embrace and acknowledge the fact that you have data that you can use to make business decisions that are practical, right? Because I think there are opportunities there, definitely. I think the data shows you exactly what people are doing, and sometimes will reveal trends that maybe your clients don't realize. So you can see it and then now just project, what they'll need, right? I may not know this, but maybe you can say, this person is traveling every year October for to on this toll. Maybe it's my anniversary at that point, so maybe the app can then now push something to me to say, hey, in preparation for your trip, like what there's so many things that my mind goes to in terms of that opportunity. And then of course, just the data about maybe the areas that are populated most, opportunities for having, highways closer to those zones, or just so many things, right? Let me stop. There's just so many opportunities there that I see. So I
Right.
look at updates. Yeah.
I think
All right.
we like to see the possibilities. I mean, the possibilities are virtually endless. Understanding the customers, understanding what they require, understanding, how do we deliver that to them? Are there other services that they may require as well? How do we assist in providing those other services as well? It's virtually limitless in terms of what we're able to do.
All right, good
And
stuff.
not many people have 75,000. Not many other companies in Jamaica have 75,000 people who, with touch points every day.
Agreed. You also mentioned two things in your presentation: the adoption of credit cards, allowing persons to be able to use their cards, and you mentioned a digital wallet, maybe something you're working on with Link. Any progress updates on those two areas?
Right. So, in fact, right now we're actually testing credit cards in L.E.A.R.N at Spanish Town. So actually, if you go to Spanish Town now, you can actually use your credit card. Again, it's not where we want it to be. The system is not interconnected, which is where we would like to be able to have, the credit card system interconnected with the tolling system, which would allow us to have what we call unattended mode. Right now we have attended mode. So when you go to the toll collector, you can give them your credit card and we can undertake a transaction. But ultimately where we want to go is unattended mode, where you just drive into the lane, you tap your credit card and you go through. And so that's something we're working with our, what we call our toll integrator to implement. We expect hopefully that to be in place by next year.
Okay, great. And the digital wallet that you're working on with Link?
Right. So we continue to work on that. The adoption of digital currency has not been as fast, I think, as everyone would have hoped. But the idea is to be able to take advantage of that once it comes into being. We've been working with Link in terms of developing that digital wallet as part of the integration of the credit card machines into the tolling system.
Okay. So in terms of the app usage, and this is the last tech question, I promise. In terms of the app usage, so you mentioned about 70,000 clients. How many persons have you seen really embrace usage of the app, and how are you trying to encourage more usage of that?
Right. So the ways you can top up your account currently are one, via the app. You can do it via the web, or you can do it in the lane itself. When you're driving through, you can give the toll collector some money and they can top up your account. Those are the three ways currently that you can top up your tag account. Over the past year, we've seen the top ups via the app and via the web increasing, and top ups via the lane decreasing. That was so up until about the middle of the year. We're seeing a little shift over the past few months in terms of how people are topping up. But we're continuing to work through that. So the idea, obviously, is to move away from topping up in the lane. Because obviously, the more top ups in the lane you do, the more delays you have in the lanes itself. So we're encouraging persons to top up via the web or top up via the app. And as we've seen, maybe in the first half of the year, that number has continued to grow.
Okay. And I remember as well, you mentioned a push in terms of social media. Are you seeing engagement from persons on social media? Is it something that you think that is maybe, I guess, how do you engage persons in that way? I imagine it must be an interesting challenge.
Right. So you'd have seen we now have video boards in place in all the toll plazas where we communicate with the community generally. The video boards also link back to our social media campaigns. We do various motivational Mondays, for example, where we encourage people to send in motivational quotes or simple things like birthdays or anniversaries. So through those mechanisms, we're trying to build our social media presence as well. Not going as fast as we would like it to, but we've grown significantly over the past year.
Okay. I mean, the good step is that you've made the decision to embrace it. Again, it's good to see that when companies understand that, that's a good way to engage, clients. You're embracing technology as well, which is good. So all those things I think, are good to see. It means that you'll be ready for the future generation that is all about tech, all about
Absolutely.
social media. And so you'll be ready to engage them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about traffic, right? So you would have built a business around the fact that you are anticipating traffic to be steady, increasing, and in a sense, almost predictable, because that's how you make money. So how have you seen that progression? Are you ahead of where you expect to be in terms of those numbers, and what exactly impacts the number of persons that you see on the tool every day?
Right. So as we discussed, traffic numbers obviously took a hit during COVID. We had maybe a 15% decline in traffic in 2020. By 2021, we started to recover. By 2022, we were fully recovered. So our 2022 traffic numbers were actually slightly ahead of our IPO forecast. They were actually about 2% above our IPO forecast. So I think we are fully recovered from the impacts of COVID. Typically, we expect our traffic to grow maybe about 2.5%, 3.5% per year. And we've seen that growth. We're actually ahead of that growth. And so we expect our, by 2036, we did projections right through to the end of the concession. Right, we expect our traffic numbers to gradually increase above, higher than our IPO projection by 2036.
So so you mentioned 2 to 3% projection. I'm wondering here, is there anything that, outside of a pandemic, of course, is there anything that would significantly hinder a person's usage of the tool? And is there anything that would potentially, I guess, just blow those numbers out of the water? Meaning, what would make it grow by 20%, 30% instead of 2 to 3%?
Right. So the thing that would obviously drive traffic is obviously development. And in AGM, we talked a lot about developments taking place adjacent to the highway. The L.E.A.R.N Lodge development, which I think is greater than 16,000 homes to be built. The developments out at Longville, the development by Old Harbour, the improvements as we go further west, once the highway goes all the way into Mandeville, the developments in and around those areas of Clarendon Park, Tollgate, those areas. So obviously developments along the highway impact the growth of traffic on the highway. The more developments we have, is the more we expect to have traffic growth. On the negative side, there are not many things that impact the highway on negative side, except, for example, contraction in the economy. So obviously, where there's contraction in the economy, there's going to be reduction in people movement and therefore reduction in growth. The other thing which impacts the highway is obviously if there are competing roads which are built parallel to the highway, which reduces the traffic on the highway. And those kind of competing road provisions, we have protections in the concession against the development of those competing roads. Well, let me put it another way. We have provisions in the concession agreement which provide compensation to Trans Jamaica where there are competing roads which are built, which take traffic off of the highway.
Okay, interesting. So really, it's really just, I guess, waiting for the government to increase those developments, which would bode well for the use of the toll. Is there anything that you do in terms of like advocacy or support or consultation when it comes to the building of those developments?
You're talking about the housing developments now?
Yes, yes.
Well, obviously, we try and encourage the developments around the highway. So we're talking to the developers about, how we can provide additional access. So one of the things that we discussed, and we'll probably discuss more about, is how can we bring those new developments which are being built along the highway onto the highway. In fact, obviously, those things are in our own best interest. So the second part of that is how can we invest in those developments? How can we encourage those developments to happen, which will ultimately, obviously, increase the traffic on our roadways.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So in terms of those two developments that you mentioned at the AGM, I think Bernard Lodge is one, and Jacaranda, are those what is there a timeline for those? Is it really up to the developers, and you've already have an agreement in place? Tell us about those two new access ramps.
Right. So there are actually three locations that we're looking at as priority. The Freetown ramps, which are the ramps by Longville. Longville is already a large housing scheme, and we would like to improve the ramps that we have at Longville. And that is probably the first set of ramps to proceed, and we expect that will probably start in the early first half of next year. The other ramps that we talked about, the Jacaranda, the ramps at what we call Heartlands Road, which is where we have a number of existing housing schemes, Jacaranda, Whitewater, Silver Sun, which is NHG is building at Inwood. All of those developments would obviously significantly benefit from that. That ramp, we are now finalizing the discussions with L.E.A.R.N and NWA in terms of the design and how that the connection will be made to the existing Old Harbour Road. So once that is in place, then we expect to be able to start those ramps. So that is probably later down in 2024. And then following that, we also looking at how we can improve the connections to the whole of the L.E.A.R.N Lodge area. As we discussed here earlier, there's about 16,000 houses to be built in the L.E.A.R.N Lodge area. And so again, we think we can benefit from that by creating new ramps onto the highway.
Okay, so that may lead to essentially 16,000 new clients, right? Potentially.
Potentially, or more than that.
Yes,
Because
yes.
typically these houses are
multiple cars
about
and visitors, and yes, interesting.
We estimate about 1.5 cars typically per household.
Yes, that is true. That is true. Okay. So in terms of, there are some kind of ongoing negotiations or developments that were alluded to as well. There is the phase 1C negotiations with NRAC. That's a specific question that I was asked to ask you. So what's the status of that currently?
Right. So as we had indicated previously, Trans Jamaica has a right, what we call a right of first refusal, including in our agreement with the government of Jamaica, which is the first right of refusal to operate the section of the highway from Nathan to Williamsville. This was completed earlier in September of this year. We are actively in discussions with NRAC now, trying to come to an agreement on that section of the highway. The Prime Minister had indicated that he expected tolling to start the 1st of January of 2024. And so if everything goes well, then hopefully we'll come to an agreement and we'll be able to start operating that come January.
Okay, so is there anything in particular that's delaying the agreement, or is it just a matter of the process being followed in terms of?
It's just the process being followed. So NRAC has retained a number of advisors to assist them with evaluating the proposal which we made. So as we indicated, we've made a proposal now in keeping with the concession agreement since about 2021, and they're continuing to evaluate it. And as I said, we expect to be able to conclude before the end of the year.
Okay, as I was gonna say, we are pretty much about 7 weeks away from that point. Okay, so I guess we'll see how that is. But I guess once it's finalized, an announcement would be made and to let the public know what has been decided.
Right. So obviously, once an agreement has been reached, we'll advise our shareholders. Obviously, if we are operating, then obviously we'll also publish what we expect the tolls will look like. So the user would know what the toll rates would be going into January.
That's the part that I'm looking forward to, right? The impact on potential revenues going into 2024. I mean, we'll get there, but I wanted to talk now about my personal favorite topic, and that's dividends. Everyone knows me on this channel to be a dividend investor, and I'll say to you, Ivan, that I've long lamented the fact that we don't have more double-digit yields for dividend-paying stocks locally. So it was quite interesting to see the dividend that was announced. So, congratulations on that. I wanted to ask you though, dividends, is there a consideration to do either a quarterly payout or a twice yearly payout? And the reason why I ask this is that as a shareholder, you would essentially have to wait a full year to get that dividend payment, but it's a good dividend. So maybe it can be split into quarters or twice per year. So yeah, tell me your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. So we've been looking at that for the past few months. The issue for us is really just the administrative issues. Because we have so many shareholders, not all of our shareholders we have bank mandates for them. And therefore, there are a lot of shareholders who we still send out checks to. And as you can imagine, because of that, there are a lot of checks coming back. So the administration of that process gets very difficult. This year, we're encouraging more and more of our customers to ensure they have their mandates in place with their brokerage houses. And we anticipate, hopefully by next year, we'll get to at least 2 payments per year. That was our plan for this year. But things change a little bit given our discussions in relation to phase 1C. But once phase 1C is behind us and we have more clarity in terms of the cost implications and the funding implications, then we expect to move to at least twice per year by next year.
Okay. So I do understand that because, and it's such an interesting thing. I think maybe some shareholders aren't aware of the opportunities for the mandate. So for example, I do think that once you're, for example, applying for an IPO, the mandate should be almost mandatory, because it would just help administration altogether for the entire distribution of dividends, right? So I think maybe working with the JC or your registrar on that could maybe help a little bit there, because I think it should be something that is an exchange push and not necessarily just being done by you.
All right, so that's something, especially before our last dividend payment, we had a long discussion with JCSD and JC and registrar about getting more of our customers' mandates in place. we've had some success, but still we have a lot of people still outstanding.
So the next question that I have for you is how do you see the dividend progressing as you go throughout the years? Are you hoping to increase the yield based on IPO price? What do you see there in terms of potential?
Right. So if you look at our IPO document, you'll note that we anticipated. Well, first of all, our dividend policy is to try and maximize the payment of dividends to shareholders, taking into account the normal operating financial requirements of our various agreements, and obviously taking into account the initiative that we talked about earlier, the investing in those brands, etc. But once we have those things covered, then we expect to pay out almost all the additional funds. And as you'd have seen in our IPO, we anticipate that will actually grow over the years. So right now, our dividends in September of this year would be about maybe 12.5% of, if you take the amount we paid as a percentage of our IPO price. And we expect that will gradually grow significantly, maybe double by the time we get to later years of the concession. So our dividends are expected to grow annually as we grow, as our debt servicing goes down, then we expect that the dividends will also go correspondingly.
So essentially, the more money you save, the more money you make, the more efficiencies that you can bring about. It goes right to the bottom line to shareholders.
Exactly. And the more we pay off the bondholders for the loans that we have, then obviously the more funds will be available to pay the shareholders.
Okay, interesting. So this is a wild question. I just still have to ask: is there any point in the future you see maybe a quarterly dividend or maybe even a monthly dividend? I mean, I just see the limitless, potential for Trans Jamaica.
Yeah, so I mean, once you get over this hurdle with the mandates, I think once we get, the majority of our customers having bank accounts that the dividend can be sent straight to, we'll again increase the frequency of dividend payment. I don't know if that will get to monthly, but I suspect that by 2025 we'll probably get to quarterly.
Quarterly would definitely be good. It would be interesting to see that, especially as the yield increases. I just think that there's a certain amount of, I mean, again, this is how I just see Trans Jamaica, that it's infrastructure, right? So the usage is expected to go up over time. The use of cars, the type of car won't matter. People may change their cars, but they're going to be using the toll. And so as we get more populated, as there are more developments, it only serves to be a staple pretty much for the market. So they're just great opportunities there, I see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the potential for a share buyback. You would have had an amendment to your articles recently. Is it something that we may see soon in terms of a buyback of shares? Is it something that you've considered? Tell us about that a little bit.
I think when we looked at the issue of the share prices earlier this year, the shares were still trading somewhere around the IPO price, and we didn't feel that at that time the share price reflected the value of the share, and so we started looking at the question of the share buyback, and obviously we went to shareholders who approved it at the AGM. But now we see almost a full recovery. Our share price is up, I think, maybe 85% year to date, despite the general market being down maybe 12%. So we think that the current share price much better reflects the value in the share. And so that's not an issue that we're currently focused on.
Interesting. So in your minds, if the price had stayed depressed to where it was, it would have been a great opportunity
Absolutely,
to buy back shares at that point.
absolutely,
Right now, because there has been, significant appreciation, it may not make monetary sense at this point.
exactly,
Which
exactly.
tells me if you feel that way again at some point in the future, I guess based on your profitability, available cash, etc., it may be something that you look at once more.
Right. So, I mean, it's obviously something we're going to continue to monitor. Obviously, as we improve the operations, as we bring on these additional projects, um, the profitability of the company we expect it to improve. And at that stage, we'll review where the shares are trading and whether it makes sense to buy back shares at that point in time.
Okay, understood. So we do have some questions from our community that was submitted. So I'm just scrolling through to see what some of those are. I know we would have covered most of it already. I see a question here from Michael asking the update on the gas station with Rubis. I believe I had it on my question, but I didn't ask it. So what's the status of that? And further to that, how would a company, let's say, that wants to build a gas station or wants to have some type of service along the highway, how is that process normally done?
Right. So we've been actively discussing now with Rubis plans to construct a gas station. The site of the gas station is just adjacent to the toll plaza at Portmore, along the Portmore Causeway. Rubis is going through a process, obviously, of getting the various approvals, from NEPA, the NWA, the parish councils. Once those approvals are in place, we expect that they'll be able to start. This is a turnkey project for them. So our agreement with them is that they will design, finance, and construct and operate the service station. Similar to the facility that Total now has at Old Harbor. It's a similar kind of agreement. So we continue to look at, especially where we have these interchanges, um, at the potential for adding new service facilities. There are a number of new potential locations on the Macon to Williams field, which could serve as an ideal location for a restaurant or for a new service station or a coffee shop. Um, our the way we look at these things is how can we create a destination? And it's one thing to just drive past and stop when you're driving past. But how can we create a destination, some attraction along the highway that people want to go to? They'd actually leave Kingston to visit that destination. But those are the kinds of things that we'd love to be able to do. We think a very nice restaurant in the toll gate area would be an ideal addition to the attractions on the South Coast. And so that is another area that we'd love to pursue.
There are definitely lots of opportunities there, I think, because there's a lot of land. So there's a lot of things that can be done. In my mind, it would just be so perfect to have a park along the way there because we don't really have parks in Jamaica anymore. And I'm old enough to remember that we had in the past. And I think that's always something that would make sense where there is good space, right? With the ones that we had were relatively small. So I think that's a good opportunity. In terms of other forms of revenue, because Rubis, of course, would be renting or leasing or paying something. So there would be
Right.
some revenue generating
Mhm.
for Trans Jamaica. In terms of other forms of revenues, billboards, advertising, other forms, so how aggressive are you with getting those additional forms of revenues? Is it something that you have at the top of your list, or is it just when it comes in?
Right. So if you travel along the highway recently, you'd have noticed that almost a significant number of our bridges now have billboards on them. The entrance to the toll roads have billboards on them. We're discussing the potential for electronic billboards, probably using some of the video boards that we currently have. We have 2 or 3 of the major billboard companies in Jamaica working with us to improve that side of the revenue. There is also revenues from ducting along the highway, fiber optic ducting along the highway. Again, that's another area that we think could potentially generate additional revenue.
Okay. So I have a question here from SF. is initial. Is asking, what should shareholders expect towards the end of the concession agreement in 2036? I know it's a ways off, but he says, or they say, are there any plans to add additional assets to the group?
Right. So the modification to the concession agreement took place in 2019, started 2020. Now gives Trans Jamaica Highway an option. So previously the concession agreement didn't have an option, but it now includes an option, which is for those of you who listen to the stock market or watch the stock market news, an option is a right, but not it's an obligation. It gives you a right to purchase the concession again for another 35 years, or to extend the concession agreement for another 35 years at prices that are agreed. So this is different from a right of first refusal, where you're negotiating a price. In an option, the price is almost agreed upfront, and you have this right, providing that you're able to pay for this option, to exercise the option. So come 2036 or 2035, as the concession provides, we will start looking at that aircraft. Obviously, we'll start looking at it before that. But by then, we think that we probably could exercise the option to extend the highway at that point in time.
Okay. And no doubt the variables will be very different, 12 years from now than they are right now. Which lends me to the next set of questions as we, prepare to wrap up this interview. What does the future look like for Trans Jamaica? It's do you see yourself expanding your services outside of Jamaica? Are there maybe parishes that you'd love to be in, or gaps you'd like to fill in our local market? How do you see that, the plans, moving forward?
Well, there are a number of potential opportunities in Jamaica that we think are very attractive or very exciting. The first is obviously the new Montego Bay bypass, which is being constructed, which is a 15-kilometer roadway around Montego Bay. That's a potential new asset that we could manage, and so that's one of our potential projects. That project also includes extension of or construction of a new road from Montego Bay down to south of Mobile, going towards the south coast. Again, that's a new potential project. The government has been talking about extending the East-West Highway from Williamsfield, where it stops now, going further west. Again, that's a major both construction and operational project that we think is also very attractive. So there are a number of new projects in and around Jamaica that we think over the next maybe 2 to 3 years, we see ourselves becoming more and more involved in.
What about outside of Jamaica?
Yeah. So outside of Jamaica, there are also obviously some great opportunities. Starting first in the Caribbean, we are probably the only operator of toll roads in the Caribbean, and so that gives us a leg up on a lot of the new developments taking place. Guyana is an interesting place for us. There are a lot of potential projects in Guyana that we'd love to be able to be involved in. Trinidad is also another interesting place for us as well. So we're looking at those in addition to the expanding our footprint in Jamaica.
Okay. So in terms of inorganic growth, do you have anything in the pipeline that you're working on? Is it something that you have, top of mind to grow in that way as well?
Right. So we talked a little bit about the ones in Montego.
Yeah.
But obviously, if the opportunity arises, we talked earlier about the developments along the highway. Right now, we are primarily just an operating company. But if we were to take on, for example, a new housing development, then we would likely maybe acquire a contractor or acquire a developer who could work with us in implementing those developments. There are, as I said, there are lots of land between Maypen and Kingston that are being opened up by the highway. We obviously have a leg up because we can influence where the interchanges are placed, and so that gives us a significant advantage in terms of where a development is likely to be. And as I said, if we were to do a development like that, there are a number of ways we could do it. One is to obviously partner with a developer, or one is to acquire a developer, which would give us a long-term stake in the development going forward.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to ask you two personal questions. This is what I ask, again, CEOs to just get a little bit of an understanding as to who they are. What are you reading or listening to right now? Are you a book reader? Do you listen to podcasts? How do you engage in self-development and learning?
I'm not reading anything right now. My favorite books would have been Tom Peters and Rothman, In Search of Excellence. So every now and again I go back and reread. It's an interesting book about how companies remain excellent over a long period of time. There's obviously also trying to make us a great team, and we try and keep our team in touch with the latest improvements in technology that's happening around the world. So we are very much involved in areas like International Bridge and Toll Road Association across the world, where we continue to attend to take part in those seminars, which gives us exposure to what is potentially possible, what people are actually doing, and how we can participate in that process.
Okay, great, good stuff. In terms of as an investor, do you invest currently? And if yes, is it in the stock market? Is it in real estate? Is it maybe farming? What do you do in terms of personal investments?
So obviously I'm a big shareholder in Trans Jamaica as well. I used to invest in the US stock exchange. Having got burned, decided to leave that alone. But yes, I'm an investor in the Jamaica Stock Exchange. My largest shareholdings are in Trans Jamaica. And I expect to continue to hold shares in Trans Jamaica going forward.
Okay. So what would be a tip that you give to investors? Because we have, of course, a community of thousands of investors. What's the one thing that you think has been the key to your success as an investor?
I think, as you know, the stock market is a very interesting, an interesting concept. At every share price, there is a buyer and a seller. So at every share price, there is somebody who believes it's worth more, and on the contrary, there is somebody who believes it's worth less. And so it's difficult to believe you're going to get rich simply by looking at how share prices move. I think it's more important for you to understand the company that you're investing in. The good thing is that in Jamaica we can have a much more hands-on understanding of a company. When you're investing in the U.S. market, you're typically reading news reports and briefings on the company. When you're in Jamaica, you can actually drive out to Portmore Causeway or drive out to P1 and actually see what is happening in the morning. And that gives you an insight into what is happening with the company. Or for any other company, if you're buying cement, you could drive out to the cement company and you could see what trucks are being loaded, how much trucks are coming out of the plant every morning. You can get a first-hand feel for these companies. So critical for me, I think, is make sure you understand the business that you're investing in. Take the opportunity, because the companies are here, to see them upfront. Drive out to the company, call the company, talk to the company, understand the company. Once you have done that, then when you make an investment, it's easier to keep the investment when the market is going down, for example, if nothing fundamental has changed about the company. And so I'd recommend that people who invest in businesses that they understand. We think Trans Jamaica is a simple company. You can see the traffic numbers, you can see the revenue numbers, you can see what is happening. Invest in businesses you understand, and therefore I think you'll turn out to be a lot better in the long term.
Fully agreed with you there. I think that's something that, and actually the reason why we started our CEO series was to help persons to understand more about the leaders of the companies that they're invested in. So even interviews like this, I think, is a great opportunity to understand, because I think you can learn a lot about where a company is headed by understanding its leader, right? So the CEO series for me tells me what type of leader, what's the mindset, how. The reason why I ask about the personal investment strategy, I want to see kind of get into the mindset of the CEO to see where the company is likely to head, right? Because we as an individual, you have a great influence on the direction of the company. And if you have a personal investment philosophy, there's a good chance that you'll be heading the company in a similar direction, if that makes sense. So I do agree with you. The US market, I think it's a lot of data, right? It's a lot of information, and things change almost daily. And so it's a lot of information to keep up with. But we have the benefit of having, I guess, a little bit of a slower paced market where we don't have an abundance of news in that way. So really, you can do quite extensive research in a very short time because of, for now, I think, just limited sources of information. Of course, we're hoping that that changes over time as we, have more channels like L.E.A.R.N, Grow, Invest coming out. But I definitely understand being burned in the US market. So that is actually it for all of my core questions. I wanted to just thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Our Q3 results were released last night, so they're up on the JC website.
Yes, I have them here. You want us to? Okay.
I mean, just to maybe close by saying our profit after tax was up 300% over last year. So it's been a fabulous 9 months for us, and we're very grateful.
So I'll just ask you one question regarding how do you see you closing out the year with how the first 9 months have gone? Because we know that you mentioned the 12 million US cost savings with the acquisition, and we're seeing you headed there. So where do you think you'll finish out the year?
So if you take our numbers for last year and deduct 12 million or add 12 million to the bottom line, taking into account obviously the tax implication, I think you get a good feel for where we expect to be at the end of the year.
Okay, good stuff. And then when we get to next year with that half a year dividend, we may see something coming out early in the first half of the year.
Yeah, hopefully we anticipate that. So by next year, once we get phase 1C behind us, phase 1C obviously is a big issue for us in terms of the cash it may require. Once we get more clarity on how much funds we need to invest, then I think we'll be it will be a lot easier to move to maybe 2 or 4 times a year.
Okay, great. I want to thank you so much, Ivan. I had a great time talking with you. I learned so much about the company. I learned a lot about you as well. And I look forward to the domino game we may be able to play one day. I'll ask my mom to join me because I don't
Certainly,
think
anytime.
a good match.
I'm always up for it, Jeremy. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much as well. We'll
Thank you.
definitely talk again soon. I really hope you enjoyed that interview like I did. I had a lot of fun recording it. So I want to thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out the other interviews here in our CEO series and let me know which CEOs you'd like me to interview next. It doesn't have to be CEOs that are listed. We actually expanded the scope recently to companies that have entrepreneurs that can tell an interesting story. So be sure to let me know in the comments below which CEOs you'd like us to interview. And I just love your feedback in general about our content, our channel, and what ways you think that we can provide great value to you. So thank you for watching. Check out this next video that is linked, and I'll see you in the next one.
Learning is the key to successful investing. And who doesn't want to invest in some way?
Here at L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest, we focus on financial education, all with the aim of sharing our knowledge on personal finance, investing, and building wealth. We do this on the foundation of our faith in God.
If a more holistic approach is what you need, check out our Grow Faith-based financial coaching program.
Find out more about us at learngrowinvestclub.com
and follow us on all social media platforms at L.E.A.R.N Grow Invest.